brings him down to his knees. Down to his knees. God had been broken more than a time or two. Yes, Lord. Then he picked me up and showed me what it means to be a man. All my hope is in Jesus. Thank God that yesterday's gone. All my sins are forgiven. I've been washed by the blood. All my hope is in Jesus. Thank God that yesterday's gone. All my sins are forgiven. I've been washed by the blood. Oh, I've been washed by the blood. I've been washed by
Good morning. Good morning. It is good to see you here today for Sunday school. There we go. We've got power this morning, all right? It is good to have you here and excited about today, this morning. And I know it's been a whirlwind weekend, a few days for a lot of our church family, obviously with several deaths throughout our church. And so, but we're excited what God's going to do for us this morning. It is an honor to have my friend, Brother Jim McComas, and he is the CEO and Executive Director of Free Will Baptist Family Ministries. Y'all are stationed out of Greenville, Tennessee, correct? And that's kind of the home. And then he'll tell you about all the reaches and aspects of their ministry in just a moment. It's also an honor to have his wife with him, Miss Beth, and she wasn't able to join him for when he was in revival with us back in the fall of 2020. But it's an honor to have him. They were with us last night for our couples banquet. Did a great job, and if you weren't here, you missed it. I've never heard a marriage challenge or a couples banquet setting challenge from Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7, which talks about how man was formed of the dust of the ground. And he preached on dirt. And it was good, wasn't it? Those of you who were here, it was good. Talked about 4 kinds of soil we ought to have in our marriages, and man, it was encouraging, it was strengthening. We had a wonderful time of food and fellowship, but I'm going to give the rest of this Sunday school hour to Brother Jim, and he's going to tell us a full scope of his ministry, of what God is, how God is using them to reach people with the gospel in unique settings. And then at the end, Lord willing, if we got time, we'll have time for you to ask him any questions, because I know for many of you in here, you become acquainted with family ministries in the last few years, but you're still learning more aspects about it, and so you'll have a chance to ask any questions that you would like to. So, Brother Jim, you go ahead, and good to have you here this morning.
Good morning. You notice that your pastor talked about my message. He went in great detail. He talked about the meal. He did not talk about the games that were played last night. That was not mentioned. That was, but I have to say, for my wife coming in here, I've never had any perception of this church. What an eye-opening thing to be there last night and experience. That's all I'll say about that, and he can give you the rest of that report later. It is good to be back here, and I remember being here in revival a couple years ago, and it's good for us. This starts my speaking schedule, my outside travel schedule for the year. So I've been at home pretty much November, December, and January, but excited to get back out and to share. I don't really, to be honest with you, get the opportunity like this one to give a full-scale review and sharing of our ministry. So any questions you have, I'll be glad to answer. And then we have, of course, the table set up, so there's lots of material back there, and we'll be glad to share with you, and then we're going to give you something here a little bit later. I don't know how familiar you are with our denomination and all of its ministries. If I were to ask you what you thought was the largest ministry in the Free Will Baptist denomination, as you begin to think about all of our national ministries, you may multi-million-dollar budget. Probably you Home Missions Department, North American Ministry, or the International Missions Department. Both of those, many obviously employees and couples ministering around the world and around the country. International missions and home missions with, I think, $6 million budget and $7 million budget, respectively. But would it shock you to know that the largest entity as far as an outward ministry in the Free Will Baptist denomination is Free Will Baptist Family Ministries? Our budget on a yearly basis would be more than both our Home Missions Department and our International Missions Department combined, if you put them together. Our budget usually runs between $15 and $17 million, and we have over 200, usually somewhere between 225 and 250 employees. That's today. I'll give you the history of our ministry and maybe a little bit of history about how we got there. And then, like I said, we'll be glad to take any questions that you have. There'll be a test afterwards, too. I don't think we have any Reese cups left. I think those all got given out. But I'll give you a free music CD or something if you can answer some questions correctly. I do this with our boys on our campus all the time when I give this history. Our ministry is we are just now starting our 84th year. 84 years ago, and we started where my office is, where our administrative office is, in Camp Creek, Tennessee. Has anybody ever been to Camp Creek, Tennessee? I'd be very shocked if there's anybody that's been to Camp. Camp Creek is a suburb of Greenville. I mean, if you'll see, our address is Greenville, Tennessee, but we are located just about 15, 20 minutes outside of Greenville, at the foot of the Cherokee National Forest. I mean, we are at literally, we bump right up to the Cherokee National Forest. We're at the foot of the mountains. We're in a bowl. We're down low, and the mountains around us, and because of that bowl, let me tell you something else you may not have believed. If I was to ask you what was the windiest place in America, you might say Chicago. You know, we all know Chicago as the Windy City. That is fake news. There might be politicians up there that are windy, but the windiest place in America is Camp Creek, Tennessee. That is the truth. The National Weather Service has a wind meter there that they constantly monitor because of the fact that we're in a bowl. I stayed, before we moved from Nashville over, I stayed on our campus, a little house that we have there, and I would get up in the middle of the night, and I would think that there's a hurricane or something. I'd rush outside, and it's just another windy night in Camp Creek. I came out of devotions from our school and looked over at the elementary school one morning, 60, 70, 80 mile an hour gusts that morning, and I watched as the roof just blew off of the gymnasium over at the elementary school. That's just another day. Several years ago, this made national news. We had 3 major F4 tornadoes that came through and killed 7 people in that little community of Camp Creek. And so it is a very windy place. But 84 years ago, the Tennessee State Association of Free Will Baptists bought the property that we remain on today, and that's where it all started. The Presbyterians had an orphanage. It was called the Big House. It was a big white house that sat there on the property. Now understand that 84 years ago, that as far as how children's services are done in the United States was a lot different than today. 84 years ago, there was no such thing as a Department of Children's Services and Social Services agencies as we have now. And so it was basically, if somebody needed to come, if somebody wanted to bring a child there, they could just bring them and drop them off, and that was it. Now, that's not the way that it is today. But 84 years ago, the Tennessee state bought our property for the purpose of ministering to children, and it was considered an orphanage, the Tennessee Free Will Baptist Orphanage. And the first young person that we took care of 84 years ago there was a farmer in our community there, and he had several children, and his wife passed away, and he was unable and could not afford to keep the family together, could not afford and was not able to raise all the children himself. And so his daughter, whose name was Trula Gunther, came to live on our campus with our first director was I.L. Stanley and his wife, Free Will Baptist preacher. And so she came and she ended up living there on our campus for the next 6 years. She went to school right next to our campus at that time, which is the elementary school I mentioned. It at that time was a high school. She went to high school. Trula, while she was under our care, she graduated from high school. She graduated as the valedictorian of that high school. She then went on to Free Will Baptist Bible College, what was then Free Will Baptist Bible College in Nashville, and that is where Trula Gunther met her husband, Dan Cronk. And she became married and became Dan and Trula Cronk. And that name may be familiar to some of you, longtime Free Will Baptists, because Dan and Trula then, after graduating from the Bible College, became missionaries to India. They went around the world and ministered in India for over 20 years, and then they came back to the States. Dan then eventually passed away. Trula came and spent the last years of her life on our campus. She stayed in the Little Rock house on our campus. She is buried just down the road in a church cemetery there. Trula Cronk. And her and Dan's picture hangs in our administrative building. Trula, in her autobiography, said that she had, and this is why you all have to come and visit us sometime. She said she had been around the world. She had drunk tea with presidents and potentates and lived under the shadow of the Taj Mahal, but there was no place more beautiful than the hills of East Tennessee where she was raised. That's right where we're at. I was telling that story in Nashville, giving a presentation while I was in revival, and I said, when I got done with that, I said, that sort of just makes you want to start singing Rocky Top, doesn't it? You know, that's our state song. You know, we've got the best state song, Rocky Top. Anybody ever heard of Rocky Top? I know somebody in North Carolina has heard Rocky Top. A man toward the back of the building, I noticed when I said, it sort of makes you want to sing Rocky Top, and he's shaking his head no. Well, I'll be honest with you, that made me mad. I mean, how could you not like Rocky Top? So I called him out. I said, sir, you don't like Rocky Top? I mean, you're living in Tennessee. He shook his head again. I said, sir, are you an American? He said, no, he's from Germany. He was visiting, and so... Let me tell you something. I made his life miserable for the rest of that revival. I mean, I was preaching against him for the whole thing. But we would encourage you. If you have, we can put you up there, and you would love to come and visit our campus. Has anybody ever been to our place? Anybody? Okay. Well, you need to come on and visit. So that's where things began. Just recently, we added another part to this story. We found out Mrs. I.L. Stanley wrote a written history of their time at Family Ministries, and she told about the first boy that we took care of. The first boy that we took care of came in just a few weeks after Trula did. He was brought there from Johnson County by a pastor and his wife. Now, we don't know the circumstances as to what his problems or needs were that he came, but he didn't want to come. Matter of fact, while the pastor and his wife that had brought him were still visiting with the Stanleys, he ran away before they even left. Trula, our young lady, she went and chased him down and brought him back. He had several complaints. He said he told that preacher he didn't want to go to that place to begin with. He was a mountain boy 84 years ago. He had never seen Jell-O. He said the food was terrible. He said he wasn't going to eat anything that jiggled like that. It scared him. He wished somebody on our campus could learn how to fix beans and cornbread. And so that was our first young man. He ran within the hour after he got there. But that began 84 years of taking care of the broken and vulnerable. And from that time, our ministry has expanded greatly. Now, things have changed in the way that and I can get into this if you're interested, but with children's services, it's much different as to how we care for our children and how long we get them. But it is still my prayer, is the very same prayer that we started 84 years ago, that in the time that we have the children that are entrusted into our care, that we can make a difference spiritually and implant something in them that can help them. So we started there, and we continue to today. We have, just on our campus there in East Tennessee, we only have boys, just because of the way the campus is laid out at this time. We only have boys. We have anywhere usually now between 25 and 30. I believe when I left to come here, we had 28 on campus. So over the years, though, our ministry has expanded. That's why we are not called just the Tennessee Free Will Baptist Children's Home now, and our name now is Free Will Baptist Family Ministries, because our ministry spans several states, and we do not take care of just children now. We take care literally from pre-birth all the way to death. So we still have our campus there in Camp Creek. We also now, and I'm not going to go into the history of how all of this came about, but the Lord has worked it out. We now have 3 children's facilities in the state of Arkansas. We have a emergency shelter in North Little Rock, Arkansas, right down in Little Rock, Arkansas. So an emergency shelter is when a child is taken out because of traumatic circumstances out of their home, and before they are placed, whether in foster care or whether they need a higher level of care, they come to Florence Crittenden Home. That is our home emergency shelter there in North Little Rock, Arkansas. It's a very long history. Florence Crittenden Home was a Methodist maternity home back in the days, in the early 1900s, and so they donated the property and everything to us, and so now it's a historical building there in Little Rock, Arkansas. But we have usually anywhere from 10 to 12 children in our care and emergency shelter in North Little Rock. We have there was an abandoned nursing home that is in Charleston, Arkansas, that we were contacted several years ago. And today there in Charleston, Arkansas, we have a children's home called Maggie House that is there, where we take care of usually anywhere from 15 to 20, 25 boys and girls there in Charleston, Arkansas. And then in Fort Smith, Arkansas, on property that used to be a part of Fort Chaffee, the Army base there, we have a beautiful cul-de-sac. I mean, if you ever go out almost to Oklahoma, Fort Smith is about as close to being in Oklahoma as it still be in Arkansas. We have a beautiful cul-de-sac there, an activity building, 4 beautiful homes. We have an emergency shelter in one of those, and then the rest are children in our foster care program there in Arkansas, usually 15 to 20 kids that are taken care of there. So on any given day in our ministry, and then let me also add that in the state of Tennessee, we also run a full foster care program. So we have usually between 40 and 50 children in our care in our foster program. We see really probably more young people saved through our foster program, because we do offer that to Christian parents, and we recruit heavily in our Free Will Baptist churches there in Tennessee. They'll get involved and be a part of a family, and of course they'll take them to church and see them gloriously saved. So anytime on any given day in our ministry, usually between 110 and 120 children are in our care between those 4 facilities, Tennessee, Arkansas, and then our foster program. But since that time we've expanded, and I told you from pre-birth to grave. So what we also have is assisted living. So we take care of the elderly. We have an assisted living called Governor's Bend that was built and founded by our ministry. One of the nicest facilities in the state of Tennessee. I mean, it really is a beautiful facility. That is in Irwin, Tennessee. And then we have the Laurels, which is in Wise, Virginia. And again, both of those were built by our ministry, and we take care of, on any given day between the two of those, we take care of approximately 110 to 120 senior citizens in those two places. Then we have a crisis pregnancy center. That is located, the Hope Center is located in Greenville. And obviously, I'm sure that you are familiar with crisis pregnancy centers in your area. And the purpose of that is to reach out and to minister to families in the community, and especially zeroing in to try to minister to abortion-minded young ladies who have found themselves expecting. They're in difficult positions, and they need help in counseling. And obviously, it is our goal to save that baby from abortion, and we provide everything that baby might need. In other words, we have full training. We have training for the dads, we have training for the moms, and while they are learning, they are earning what we call baby bucks. And so nothing is given out free. There's always responsibility for everything. It's not like just a bunch of freebies, but they learn how to be good parents. They learn how to raise that baby, and while they're doing that, then they get their pay, which is these baby bucks. And then we have a baby boutique with everything that any family would need. I'm talking about from clothes to diapers to car seats to bassinets to baby beds. If they go through our entire program, they can get a baby bed, they can have car seat, things that cost some money. So let me tell you, this has become one of the key parts of our ministry, because how many know that in the past year there was a lot of discussion about abortion when the Supreme Court struck down Roe versus Wade? And of course, obviously, we welcome that. We praise the Lord for that. But the liberals in our country would look at us as Christians and they say, y'all are pro-life until the baby's born, then you don't care what happens to that baby. Well, I think it's important that you know that you have a ministry that is Free Will Baptist. That is certainly not true, because we do counsel. Of course, we have an ultrasound machine. The vast majority of ladies, when they see the picture of that ultrasound, they will choose life. That's why an ultrasound is so important. That is one of the major fundraising things we're doing right now. Is our ultrasound machine is old, and it's almost impossible to get parts for and everything, and we're just praying it doesn't break. But we're looking at a 3D, a modern ultrasound machine, and we already have over half the money raised for that. But God has uniquely blessed the Hope Center, our crisis pregnancy center. We needed somebody to be the administrator here since I've been there. Sharon, that founded it, Sharon Hodgins, was retiring. And I prayed a lady out of retirement in Ohio, Sister Pam Crank. Her husband, they were a longtime Free Will Baptist deacon and served a long time in our church, one of our churches there in Mansfield. She had successfully run a crisis pregnancy center there in Mansfield for many years. She had retired. But she got, how many know sometimes you get antsy in retirement and you want something to do? And she was praying one morning. Matter of fact, you can go on. Dr. Eddie Moody, with his Better Together podcast for Free Will Baptist, he just interviewed Pam. You need to go and watch that interview or listen to it. It's a tremendous half hour. But she was praying, and we'd talked to her, and she'd come down and done some consulting for her. for us, and she was praying in her devotions, and she said about what God would have for her in her retirement, and she said, Lord, if you would have Jim McComas call me one more time. Well, that afternoon, I called her, and she told me that story. I said, you might as well pack now. Tell Dave, get the stuff in the car. You're coming to East Tennessee. And that's where they're at. Not only them, but her daughter and son-in-law. Her daughter is working there also in our ministry. And then her son-in-law was a water meter man in Ashland, Ohio. And I went and interviewed them. He said, I just got to believe that God has more for me to do than shutting people's water off in Ashland, Ohio. He is now working on our campus there in Camp Creek with our young men, doing a tremendous job, has a heart for our boys. And so God is really moving. But another part of the Hope Center, our pro-life ministries that we are very, very excited about is right next to the Hope Center. Several businessmen in our community, in the Greenville community, one of those businessmen, his daughter was helped and ministered to through our Hope Center. They got together. There's an old forestry office building right next. I'm talking about parking lot right next to our Hope Center. They bought that building and donated it to our ministry for the purpose of a maternity home for single mothers. Sometimes a young lady maybe burns her bridges with her family, or her family's upset with her, or she's ostracized from her family, is pregnant and has nowhere to live. So now, over the last couple years, we have remodeled. We added on to that forestry building in the back. We remodeled it, completely gutted it, and just recently got the occupancy permit for Honeysuckle Studios, which is our maternity. There's 5 apartments for 5 young ladies. So the idea is over here at the Hope Center, or any church in America, by the way. If your church would have a young lady or be acquainted with a young lady that needed those services, had nowhere to go, there's an apartment that is available for her anywhere in this country that would need it. And we have, of course, house parents that'll stay on the campus. 5 apartments open to be able to come and live, be able to have the baby, be able to, if that young lady needs to further her high school education, we can do that right there on site. If she needs college education, we have connections with the Tusculum College right there in Greenville. If she needs a job, we have connections with some of the best businessmen in the area. So again, how many believe if we can say we're pro-life all day, but if we don't do something to help those young ladies who are having to make those difficult decisions, I just feel that would make us hypocrites. And so I believe that it ought to be a source of pride for you to know that you have. By the way, you support us monthly. You are a part of what we're doing there. And again, I want to stress, if you had a young lady, if you knew somebody that needed those services, that is your ministry. There in Greenville, that we are reaching out and touching lives. And so 10 different entities across 3 states, 2 assisted livings, Virginia, Tennessee, 3 children's facilities in Arkansas, and then a full foster care program and a children's home in Tennessee. So if you total that up, we take care on the average 110, 115 senior citizens right now are in our care. 125 or so children are in our care at any given time. And then we're ministering to dozens, hundreds of families that have young babies or getting ready to have a baby. And that is what we are about. The largest entity with over 225 to 250 employees across 3 states. That is our ministry. And can I tell you that we do those things with the utmost quality and standards. We have a CARF, which is the Commission on the Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities. That's not some kind of accreditation that they give out of a Cracker Jack box. I can tell you, they come in and they go through, they audit our books, they go on campus and do just real detailed analysis of how we take care of our children. We have all of our facilities in Arkansas and our facilities in Tennessee have the gold standard, which is CARF accreditation. Just recently got that. They can put you on probation and come back in a year. They give you 1 year and then you have to do it over, or you can get a 3-year. That's the highest you can get. All of our facilities in both Arkansas and Tennessee have a 3-year accreditation currently right now from CARF, which is considered the gold standard on accreditation for facilities like ours. So you talk about return on investment. You talk about, as you give, as you contribute. Let me give you some, and I don't know if the fellas have these. I have a report for you. If they can be passing those out, I'm going to kind of give you an up-to-date report that we put together for you. Everybody likes to invest their money in something that brings a return in the physical material world. I think that you need to know where your money's going in the spiritual world, and we take that very seriously. That's why we have compiled this, and I think this is something good for you to take. I will also tell you this as far as about our finances. We are owned and operated by the state of Tennessee Free Will Baptist. Because we have assisted living in Virginia, we have one board of directors member from Virginia. That is right now is Pastor Brent Patrick at Gateway Free Will Baptist Church in Virginia Beach. We also have a board member because we have entities in Arkansas. One of our board members is from Arkansas. That right now is Johnny Miller, who is the children's pastor at the Kavanaugh Free Will Baptist Church that just opened a new big building. Johnny's kind of a legend as far as with children's pastors across our country. And then the rest of our board is made up of Free Will Baptist in Tennessee. I will tell you this. We are right now applying to foster, guess where? The great state of North Carolina. And so here pretty soon, we hope to be operating ministering in North Carolina. We're also right now currently applied to foster in the state of Ohio. So we are continuing to expand. Also, we are looking to do adult drug and alcohol rehabilitation. And we are also actively looking to partner in the state of North Carolina for that too. Brother Pat Hall and Cape Fear Free Will Baptist Church has a tremendous, they probably are as active as any church that I know that we have in recovery. And we are looking actively for property to partner with them for adult drug and alcohol programs also. So we're continuing to expand what we have. But this review, that first number, is the biggest and best number that I can give you when you talk about return on investment. Last year, somewhere in our ministry, 55 souls came to know the Lord. Now, in 2021, that was it was a record. It was over 100, first time ever in the history of our ministry. But on average, every year, somebody gets saved through some part of our ministry, about one every week. I mean, it just kind of averages out. Somebody getting saved one a week. I don't know I think that's pretty good. I think any church would kind of want those numbers. Now look, it is not just from our children. Now, our children will get saved in the short time that we have them. Most of the kids that we have in our care on campus, and I don't want to get into Family First and all the federal government's thing, but they're usually only with us 30 to 60 days. We have an alcohol and drug program on our campus in Camp Creek. That's a 60-day program. So most of the kids that we have will not be with us for a lengthy time. But even in that short time, I can tell you some wonderful stories of our young people who come to know the Lord. But 55 were saved throughout our ministry. So sometimes, as I said, often in foster situations, our foster families can really get a bond with those children, and they begin to take them to a local church, and a lot of times they will come to know the Lord. But that's not the only place that they get saved. We have a lot of people come to know the Lord in our assisted livings. That's what's the difference. Makes our assisted livings more than a business, but a ministry. When you have our employees who are praying for those folks that are in our care. In the Laurels there in Wise, Virginia, there was a man. His dad years ago. He had been raised Free Will Baptist, but he was not a Christian, and he hadn't been in church in many years. And he found out that he was not going to live very long. And the nurses there and our staff, our administrator, would go in on a regular basis. He didn't want to hear about the Lord. He didn't want to pray, but he knew that they were praying for him. And finally, just at the end, very near the end of his life, he finally agreed to talk to a preacher. He said, but it's got to be Free Will Baptist, because that's what his daddy was. Well, praise the Lord, we have a volunteer Free Will Baptist chaplain there. And they were able to call him in. He was saved, and then he wanted to be baptized. Now, the man he had breathing problems. They didn't even know if he was going to be able to live through a baptism, but he insisted that he had to be baptized, and it had to be at a Free Will Baptist church, because that's what his daddy was. Well, they got a hold of the local Free Will Baptist church, and on a Saturday night, they filled the baptistry, and they were praying that he lived, I think, another week or two after the baptism, and went home to be with the Lord. That is what it's all about. I don't know if you follow our Facebook page. I hope you do, or follow my social media. But if you do, you will have just recently seen a picture from our facility in Irwin, Tennessee, of a Free Will Baptist pastor, Brother Brown, and his wife, Talmadge Brown, who has been a Free Will Baptist pastor for over 50 years. And the picture was taken during COVID. Now, during COVID, obviously, visitation was, you couldn't visit. Brother Talmadge, at that time, just a few years ago, his wife was in our memory care unit, Sister Velma. And he would go, of course, the screen on the window, he would go. They got him a chair, and he would come outside her window and sit and visit with his wife. And when they told me that he was doing that every day, the staff had bought him a nice, comfortable chair so he could sit out there. I said, would somebody please get me a picture of that? And you need to go on our Facebook. If you've not been on our Facebook page, you can see that picture. And we posted that back during COVID of this elderly man looking in on his wife who had Alzheimer's and was in our memory care unit ward, visiting with her in COVID. That picture struck a nerve. Just everybody was all cooped up, and just you could see the love in his face for his wife. It went viral. It's been shared thousands of times. We've literally got messages from around the world, and the TV cameras came then, and the newspapers, and interviewed, and it's been a great blessing. Well, Brother Talmadge also began to get feeble, and he got Alzheimer's, and Talmadge and his wife have been in our memory care unit together, able to still be together. Sister Velma just passed away last week, and Beth and I were home. We didn't start traveling yet, so last weekend we were privileged to go to that funeral, and I wish you could hear the testimonials of the family. Brother Kyle Brown Brother Kyle serves on staff at Cramerton. And they said, we cannot tell you how grateful we are for Family Ministries and for the care that our mom and dad have been receiving. I was thrilled at that funeral to see a row full of our staff. They didn't have to do that. Nobody told them they had to be there. They all came for the entire viewing and came and sat through the funeral. And I went over and personally thanked them. And one of our aides looked at me and said, we love our residents. And that's what it's all about. It's my prayer that we not just, you do this as a job, but it truly is a ministering. And it is our staff that put the ministry into Family Ministries. So 55 souls saved through our ministry, and that is in every aspect of that ministry. A total, you see this, again, looking at this report, we cared for a total of 419 children through our children's ministries, both in Tennessee and Arkansas. 246 families served through the Hope Center, our pregnancy care center. 37 babies were born to clients that, again, all of these go through our programs, actively get training, parental care. And here's a big number. Don't pass this up. I praise the Lord for this number. Out of those 37 babies that were born to our clients, at least 3 that we know of were saved from abortion through our ministry. And again, I could tell you those stories. I could tell you about a lady. Actually, she came. We had to have a Hispanic interpreter. She was, and of course, obviously for privacy reasons, I can't go into too much detail, but she was not a young mother. She had 2 grown children, and found her, made some mistakes and found to be expecting, and a lot of embarrassment, and she was embarrassed for her grown children, and she said, I can't keep this baby. All she wanted when she came to our office was an ultrasound to make sure she was in the first trimester of her pregnancy. That's all she wanted. But she got a few things that she did not count on. She got the ultrasound, but she got the picture of the ultrasound. Now, the other side of this whole abortion deal, they don't want you to hear the heartbeat, and they don't want you to see the pictures. But I'm telling you, most ladies, most families, when they see that picture, they're going to keep that baby. And another thing she got when she left, now there was no judgment, there was love and acceptance and prayer. But when one of those clients come in, we get an email, a text message to start praying, and I'll send out usually to our board and to our field representatives, we have an abortion-minded client, please pray. And in a couple days, she came back and crying. She said, I cannot. I just can't do it. I'm going to have to have this baby. Again, she has the support of our people. We just say, okay, good, and then kick you out on the street. As I said, we offer all of those things that we can. Had another lady came in and said, I can't have this baby. I can't afford the ones that I have. Said, I can't get groceries for the ones that I have now. Do you know, before we did any kind of lecture on abortion or anything, you know what we did? That night, our administrator went to her local Free Will Baptist Church, loaded down a minivan with groceries, and was at that lady's house to feed the kids that she had. How many know that we've just got to meet people where they're at? What's your theme this year? Yes. Intentional impact. That's what I'm talking about. I thought, man, when I saw that, I thought that's what every church ought to be about, but that's what we're about too. I'm talking about being on the front lines, making an impact for people. Boy, well, I didn't think I'd go this long, but here we are. And so the Oaks Retreat, I didn't even mention that. We have a camp, a 200-acre camp right up from our campus there in Camp Creek. Of course, your church, anybody, a youth group, anybody. We have over 3,000 campers every year, seen many people saved through that. And of course, Governor's been in the laurels, and so this is our 84th year, and we're thankful for what God is doing in our midst and all the things that we are a part of. It is exciting. We are, and I think most of you know from the last time I was here and we did the Break the Chain deal, you know that a big part of our ministry, my wife and I's ministry, is to those struggling with substance abuse and addiction. That was obviously on my mind when I took this job. We resurrected our alcohol and drug program. I meet with those boys on our campus every Thursday at 4 o'clock. We have dinner and devotions, and then that's why we are, again, actively. But you talk about being on the front lines of the drug war in America. Over 90%, the vast majority of all of those kids that we care for are with us because their parents and grandparents are either unable or unwilling to take care of them because of their addiction problems. So we are on the front lines of many different wars. On the pro-life, we're making an intentional impact in the lives, literally from before birth all the way to death, and along the way seeing a lot of souls saved. And I think that's a pretty good return on investment, and we're pretty excited. I call us the best kept secret in Free Will Baptist, and we've been working hard to change that. You're welcome. Again, you've got this report. There's lots of other detailed on all of our facilities back on the table. This book I'm going to put back on the table, and you're welcome to take a look at that. This is a book filled, we can't show the pictures of the kids that are in our care because of privacy reasons. These are all kids that have went through our foster program and have been adopted by families, and there's some great stories in here, but you're welcome to take a look at that also. I don't know if anybody has a question before we